Okay, we'll get started here if nobody has the objections. So appointed hours arrived. Welcome to our meeting. This is the weekly finance meeting for the Board of Commissioners. Today, December 21st, 2022. Appointed hour 1:30 has arrived. We will call the meeting to order and begin with an opportunity for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the Board of Commissioners? Now's your opportunity. Anybody online?
There's somebody on the line.
Do we have a name?
It's a phone number. They have permission to talk.
Is that the 449?
Yes, 9212.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, phone finishing in 9212. We're not sure who you are, but we open the floor for anybody wishing to address the group. So if you wish to address the commissioners, now's your opportunity. Just unmute yourself and start. Give you a minute here. Okay, we're not reading anything, so we'll move on. If we need to, we can come back to that. I know sometimes there's a delay. Well, that number just went away. So, okay, any additional public comment? Anyone in the room? Apparently not. So we'll move on to business items.
We do. We have
I'm sorry.
comment in the room.
Okay. We ask you to identify yourself and your municipality.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Vernon Hindman. And I just wanted to say I've been working with folks in the community and through the criminal justice system here. I just wanted to say I was working with that 20 years ago, and amazing progress in the county in what's happening in terms of services and in terms of people you have in place to set people up for success as they leave prison. And anyway, I just want to say that congratulate the county on some amazing work.
Okay. Well, we thank you for that. Appreciate that. Always good to hear it. We know we've got some superb people are doing the heavy lifting around here, and we appreciate them very much, but it's always good to hear from others who have experience with them in that regard. So is there any other public comment? If not, we'll move on. We have minutes from our meeting of December 14. Those we can take action on those if we're ready.
Move to approve the minutes of December 14, 2022.
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. If there's no further questions, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that'll move us into item 4, our topics for discussion today. We have multiple items that need addressed here, so we'll try to move them along, but we'll do it thoroughly as well. So we have the first item is the affirmation of the capital project regarding MDJ Freeman's office. Stacy, I'll let you do any further explanation of that.
Yeah, this was a furniture request. It was expedited due to supply chain issues, as well as an increase in cost coming in the new year. This was previously approved. A vote was previously done, and this is just asking for you all to reaffirm that decision at a public meeting.
Okay, very good. Now's the opportunity for questions. Barring that, we'll entertain motion.
I'm going to move to reaffirm the capital project approval of MDJ Freedman's office furniture in the amount of $45,000.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. No further questions. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that moves us on to our next item. We have discussion in regarding to a topic discussed last week on hotel tax retention and administrative fee for the county treasurer. And Treasurer Kelly Neiderer is here, I believe, along with Janet from Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation to address any questions on the proposal. So the treasurer has the floor.
Well, we had a lengthy discussion, somewhat lengthy discussion last time. Janet and I have spoken. I believe they have modified their budget based upon the budgeted number, the projected budgeted number of revenue for 2023 that the county has. I provided Janet with, actually, it's about 21 years worth of history as to how they could maybe get very close on a monthly basis as what they could expect, how that income could come in. So for example, over 21 years in January, we receive about 5.5% of our overall budget for the year. So hopefully with that granularity, any increase would be, or any increase to my fee wouldn't be impactful to them in any given month. Janet, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say, but I am requesting to increase the fee that we assess and charge for the administration of that.
Okay, so I will add that after a couple of conversations with the treasurer and the treasurer's office, we did go back and revisit the budget. Communication is always key, and I think we're going to put together a communication time so that we're sharing information regularly, so that we're close on those numbers. We based our number on our history as well as experience of the board. We were actually really very close in the end, and we did go back and revisit the budget, as you all know, and approved it yesterday at the 4% beginning in March because of the lag in payments. So we have done that and adjusted our budget accordingly.
Okay, any questions? If there's no questions, we do have it on the agenda for possible action. I see no reason to delay. So Janet, you have all the information you need. Kelly, you have all the information you need. Commissioners have all the information they need. All right, in which case we'll entertain a motion at this point.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, but before so, I just want to thank Kelly, Janet, and your folks for communicating to solve a problem that really was quite simple. But thank you. I'll make a motion that the increase the percentage of hotel taxes retained by the county treasurer from 2% of collections to 4% of collections to cover rising administrative costs effective January 1, 2023.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. There's no further questions. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to the next bullet point, the discussion and possible motion in regards to the Conservancy grant that was discussed before. I have Kirk Stoner and Jason Beale listed as possible speakers to this. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. And again, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this in the last few months and work with us on different options. We did get some unfortunate news yesterday, which was our Wild East Action Fund grant, which was an application for $82,000, was not awarded. So that does create an additional program gap that was unanticipated based on the funding. So that's my current update. And obviously, we, based on that, we would be seeking the full award ideally, though we understand that you may have a few options to discuss.
Okay, anything to add to that, Kirk?
No, nothing to add. We've talked about the projects. I just need action from the board on whatever your wish may be.
Okay, board members.
Jason, when are you folks looking for settlement on the land? I think you had touched on a couple of dates, like mid-year at the earliest, end of your latest.
Yeah, assuming full funding for the acquisition, we would hope to close by the end of next year, or at least be significantly far along in the process. We have reached out prospectively to some surveyors, and looks like there's not the backlog we anticipated. So we think we can move a little bit quicker as far as the subdivision. There still is a lot of legal work, as we mentioned, some of the parcels there, but that would be envisioned as the main hangup.
Janet, I was communicating with Kristen last week and I think a couple days ago with the possibility, I know it's not definite, but the possibility that Katy may have tourism grants available in 2023. Is that possible?
It is.
Okay.
We would meet with our committee based on the ARPA funds that we receive. We intend to bring back tourism promotion grants.
Right. Tourism promotion grants, yes.
But the program has not yet been set up.
Yeah.
And all of that. We expect 2023, we will have funding to get out the door. I'm not sure when we'll actually receive those funds from you, so that's part of the question.
And you may not know this, but I've got to ask anyway, is there a maximum grant that would be allowed?
In the past, there has been a maximum of $100,000. So
that's not set up yet.
that is not
Okay.
established at this point. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that it will be competitive as well.
Oh, sure.
Commissioner, if I may, we have processed payment for those awards. So the checks may not be in the mail, but they're.
I'm sorry, Stacy.
I'm sorry, with the mask. The checks that Janet was alluding to for the grant awards, for the grant program, we have processed those vouchers for payment. So that we should have those checks for KDIC imminently. The grant awards that they will use for that tourism promotion program that they're setting up from the county grant program.
Okay.
Okay, other comments, questions?
Kristen, what is the total amount of the ask again, please?
Total amount asked to Cumberland was $955.
$955.
And 500.
You said what?
955, 500, I believe.
I'm sorry, Jason, so the 955, that still stands despite the denial of the 82 that you were counting on?
Yeah, that would still leave that 82,000, but that would close the other potential gaps we would have. So I'll be
Okay.
still seeking the 82,000 if we are awarded the full amount.
All right, so the business case still not closed then, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, doesn't sound like there's anywhere to go on this just yet. So, I mean, do we wish to, I don't know if we would be required to table this and reconsider other ideas, allow for an opportunity for other proposals, or just to move on with no action? It's the call of the board.
Yeah, I'm willing to make a motion. And I discussed it with the solicitor, so it's going to be worded and subject to the solicitor's review. Before I make a motion, explain how I'm coming up with it. And Jason, please correct me if I'm wrong. The land itself, I believe was the acquisition cost was $2,290,000. That's correct. And you're getting a match for half that.
The match for the full project is the full project itself, including some of the access work. We anticipate to be $2,340,000, but the acquisition based on the appraisal will be $2,290,000.
Right. But the acquisition match is half of that. That's
Yeah.
what I took. So what I did, I took the value of that property, the appraised value of the 916 acres was $2,290,000, of which 60% of it falls in Cumberland County. And if we take 60% of the of half of the appraised value because the other half is being matched. It comes out to 687,000 based on the percentage of Cumberland to York County. Now, I know York County is willing to make a contribution. I believe it's 152,500. So what my motion will be is that the Cumberland County award 687,000 to the project. That would leave my calculations about 268,000 that would still have to come from somewhere. Possibly a grant from CADIC, possibly a grant for somewhere else, possibly donations. I don't know, but that is my theory and the motion that I'm going to make here. And I'm also willing to add to that motion that to make up that $268,000 difference, for every additional dollar you guys can bring in, we'll match it on a $2 to $1 match. So that was my thought as a motion. That way, others can donate to this process. There could be a grant out there for CADIC, possibly. Janet's not committing, I'm sure not committing, but I'm trying to find some different ways to fund this. So with that in mind, I will make that motion. And the motion is subject to solicitor's review and approval to award the Central PA Conservancy a Cumberland County recovery grant as part of the infrastructure category in the amount of $687,000. County will provide additional grant funding on a $2 for $1 basis to meet the gap of $268,000, but not to exceed that amount.
That's it.
That is the motion. Again, it is subject to solicitor's review and approval.
Okay. So I'm going to second that motion. And I'm going to add a comment. So Jason, I still stand. I believe that the 955.5 should be granted in full. I fully believe that. This is what has me very concerned today. The commissioner has come up with a motion that I have seconded. Okay. I am very, very concerned that this will die if we don't do something with it. Okay. So that is the reasoning for my seconding of the motion, and then we'll vote accordingly. Okay. I did want to let you know that yesterday I was going through the annual materials that the Partnership for Better Health puts out. And they gave money to Franklin County Rail for Trail. And so I think that if you're going to go and look for things, that might be another avenue, but I certainly can't promise anything. I don't know anything about it. I just looked at their annual materials.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So this is the time for questions and comments. We heard some. Anything additional from my colleagues? I do have some comments I'm going to make too. So anything additional? Okay. I'm really concerned about this proposal as it is, because it's highly speculative. We don't have a closed business case on it that we can say this is what it's going to be, which makes it highly speculative. I'll leave aside for now my concerns about how all of these grants were pursued, but so we have, I guess the question I have is this 2-for-1 match. So where would that money come from?
It would come from the county grant program.
Which kind of grant program? The ARPA?
Yes. The request came in for $955,000. We have over $3 million left in contingency, correct, Stacy?
Correct.
And our vetting team, their recommendation was that we give away the 955.5.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you certainly have the ability to just give away the 955 as well. So, I mean, anything less than that just is speculative. And I don't think there's a lot of incentive there to match if it looks like the county's just going to pony up the money anyhow. The passing as a practice, the passing of the responsibility for gap filling potentially to CADIC is really window dressing. I mean, it's the same money, it's the same bucket of money, you're just calling it something different. So I'm not sure how this resolves the issue. And just based on that, I'm not looking to debate it, but I don't think this is a good practice, and I don't think it's practical. So based on that, I don't think I can vote for that measure.
So Jason, you see why I'm afraid this is gonna die, right? I'd like to give you the 955.5, okay?
Commissioner Fauci, if you'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to make that motion, I will drop my motion.
Okay, so do we have to drop your motion first or I make mine first?
We have a motion and a second.
Motion on the floor. It is, yeah, it was seconded. So
let's just vote on it, and I will vote no.
Okay.
But after the chairman calls for the vote.
Okay, all in favor of the motion as presented, vote aye. There are no ayes. All those in opposed, please vote no for the record.
Opposed.
Opposed. And Vince?
So I'm going to introduce a new motion?
Wait a second. Did Vince vote no? Because we have to have that for the record.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So there's the new motion.
So I'm going to move to make the ARPA award grant to the Central Pennsylvania Conservancy as part of the infrastructure category in the amount of $955,500.
For a second.
Okay. I have a question. Stacy, let's just confirm this, and I know it's a small dollar. Is the amount they requested 955,000?
I believe that the exact amount they requested was $955,500.
Could we amend the motion to make it that amount?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I said 955.5. I'm going to amend the motion so that it's very clear that it's $955,500.
If you did, I missed it. Sorry. I will second that motion.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded. Now time for questions, and I do have one or two. Just so I'm clear. So that, Jason, that still provides a gap.
This still leaves the $82,000 gap, but I do
So
think
that's
okay, feasible for us to close.
I'm sorry, you think it's feasible what?
I do think it's feasible for us to close that gap.
Okay. Within less than what, 6 months, a year?
6 months, that would be probably the shortest. I think definitely within the year. It may impact the time frame, but if we do get the full funding from Cumberland, I think that gives us the confidence to really start moving forward on the project.
Okay, so now I go back to a question that's been asked and I think answered before. With that dollar amount, what does that do to us on the per acre cost?
Apologize, Gary, I got to bring this up here.
I'm sorry, are we working on that or?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, quit on. That's fine. I just want to be sure. I'm going to keep you guys waiting on me.
I think it's about 1,400 an acre.
Yeah, that's. Okay, sorry. So cost per acre. Yes. 5. I have is 1,021. But that includes, that was with the Wild East Action Fund money. So yeah, I think the 1,450 accurate part of it.
I'm coming up with 1,043.
Okay.
Per acre.
Yes, there. It's 1,043.
Okay, that's 1,043. And the comparative number for York County, please.
166.5.
$166.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. You know, the board can do whatever it wants. I think that number kind of speaks for itself. So I'm not sure we exhausted all the possibilities before going this route, but if it's will of the board, we can vote on it. So are there additional questions or comments?
Jason, if you just, I'm gonna go through this one more time. Okay, this project will truly benefit the people of Cumberland County. It is my understanding this is a legacy project, that it's going to connect trails within Cumberland County, connect trails within York County, that this is going to be something that meets the basis of the county comprehensive plan, as well as the county strategic plan, that most of the trails are in Cumberland County. And that this really is an excellent thing for the county. Okay.
I did bring some copies of the trail maps as well, if you're interested.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'd love to have one of those, but I think did you leave one of those with us the last
I
time?
probably have been bringing maps like crazy.
Yeah, no, it really is I think it's a terrific project that really benefits the people of Cumberland County.
Kirk, are you still on?
He's sitting there very solemnly, isn't he? Stoic.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
if it
I'm
was
still
you or-
here.
Yeah, I don't know if it was you or Jason who sent information out that the benefit of this project does highly favor Cumberland more than York. Is that a correct statement? And if so, could you provide that reasoning, or you too, Jason? I don't have the document in front of me that stated all the advantages for Cumberland.
Sure. As we've talked, most of the trails that are developed are on the Cumberland side. Access is coming from Cumberland. Jason, you probably have the maps there. Maybe that'd be the biggest help.
Yeah, and I think, to Kirk's point, the colored areas on the map are right adjacent in Cumberland. That's preserved land from the Appalachian Trail, as well as state game lands, 305 and Diacon. And so that's where the existing trail systems exist, which a little bit of a mess here. This looks like spaghetti.
Yeah.
But the access point we'd be looking at does come through Franklin Township in York County, but the way the county line is, you almost jump immediately into Cumberland from that access point. We did walk that site with the Boy Scouts on Friday and have agreed upon an access that we think will work for the public and for the scouts. So, but yeah, again, that goal is to get people right into that trail system in Cumberland right off the bat.
And as far as tourism, people coming to that location will most likely be staying in Cumberland County. Correct?
It would vary. I mean, it's kind of obviously York County has a strong connection there, but where Cumberland does come around South Mountain, we do anticipate a lot of folks there, as well as driving over through Whiskey Springs Road or Coffee Town area. And one of the challenges too, I think that I alluded to, Vince, is we're seeing a lot of parking issues on the Cumberland side currently in those lots. So I think really just benefits everybody in general, the more access we can provide into the future. And in that way, folks can, pick their access based on activity level.
Okay, so now let me ask you another question here. So I got two questions actually. So, all right, we've all read about, we understand the benefits that are being stated out in terms of water quality and all that. So is there anything about this site that's unique to that, Jason? And the reason I ask is because we do have a sizable state forest presence as well that meets that need to some degree. Do we have a demonstrated shortfall in terms of those benefits, or is there something unique to this site that is does not exist or occur in other open sites that the county has?
I guess it's a really high quality mature oak hickory forest. And part of that is because with the Scouts ownership of it, obviously they haven't done any clear cutting or timber like that. There's also a nice complex of vernal pools, which may relate to former ore holes on the property. And Dr. David Foster of Messiah University has been working with his students there, and they've had research projects for probably close to 20 years or so. But there are some rare amphibians in the area, as well as populations of state species of concern, such as timber rattlesnake.
Okay, so all right. Yeah, I don't think anybody disputes that there's significant benefits. It's just, can you put a dollar figure on that? And the only reason that I say that is because, as I'm fond of saying, every dollar we spend on one thing is a dollar we don't have for something else. So trying to achieve some relative value here is, shouldn't be surprising to anybody. So my only question remaining, I believe, is for Stacy. So what's the impact on the balance of ARPA funds? Are there any recipients who are, now going to get squeezed out?
I believe we have a handful of recommendations to bring forward next week. And the review teams, the subject matter expert teams, have reviewed and re-reviewed the list. And I believe that this is really the last proposal that we will be bringing forward.
Okay. That's all I have. So anybody else have additional? If we don't have anything additional, we can call the vote. The motion's on the floor. There has been a second. So not hearing any additional questions, we'll call the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And please record me as a no vote. Thank you. Jason, thanks for being here and answering our questions today.
Thanks, Jason.
Good
Preservation of vernal pools. Unbelievable, right? It's legacy, right? It's a legacy project. It's for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, we will move on, and thank you, Kirk, as well, for your help on that. That brings us to the 2022 conditional funding for the library system. And Carolyn, are you there? Are you prepared to address this with us now?
We're going to do pretrial services.
We're going to do that first. Okay.
Yes, I believe that was in an email this morning.
Well, there've been multiple agendas circulated here and trying to know which.
You're okay, Darby?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss pretrial services this afternoon. You may have seen Judge Guido come in. He was here. He has court, I believe, and that's why he's not sticking around. We do have Judge Peck here, and also the district attorney. And I see John Burbeck, who represents the magisterial district judges. And I believe Michael Halkias, the public defender, is planning to come on Zoom at some time. And there he is. His timing's great. And also the warden is in attendance. They all support the initiative and all have been helpful to get us to this point. So in front of you, you do have a packet of information that was provided previously. I just want to go over what's included in that packet. On the right side of your packet is just a program description, 4 or 5 page program description. Behind that is a draft policy for pretrial services, followed by an organizational chart. And the first page of the organizational chart is with pretrial services. And the second page is our current organizational structure in adult probation. And then you will notice a couple briefs. They're titled EBP briefs. The first is on assessment. And the reason that that is included is because assessment is a part of pretrial services, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And also a brief about evidence-based practices. And the basis for this program is really born out of research. So evidence-based practices does apply. On the left side of your folder is just a quick reference sheet about establishing pretrial services. And on the left column, it says without pretrial services, which is basically our current practice. And on the right side says with pretrial services. Obviously, if pretrial services are established in the county, that's the way to look. So I just want to step back and talk a little bit about how we got to this point. Pretrial services was actually discussed in the Criminal Justice Steering Committee several years ago. At that time, we had conversations with Allegheny County, who has a well-established program for the past 20 years. We also talked with various stakeholders in the county, and we all thought it was a great idea to move forward. Then COVID hit, so it kind of derailed the process. But I did want to talk a little bit about what happened during that period. During the pandemic, we actually learned about the importance of the pretrial service program and really what we were missing out on. As the court reduced the prison population in a mitigation effort against COVID, we learned that there was very little useful information available to determine which inmates were appropriate for release. A pretrial service program would have given the court the additional background information needed to make those good decisions. Adult probation also found itself thrown into pretrial services. It's something that we had never done before. And we found that many times those folks who were released, the information that was relayed to the judges was not always factual, because most of the information that the judges were relying on was in court. The defendant provides information, but it was never verified. And some of those issues were that the defendants just didn't have suitable living arrangements. And there were several other issues, drug and alcohol concerns, mental health concerns, that were not brought to the court's attention. If the situation would have been properly vetted by pretrial services, either earlier in the process, verified information would have come to light, and it would have allowed the court to make a more informed decision. So the steering committee picked the initiative back up again in 2021. Judge Pack is here, and Judge Pack actually chaired the committee that brought us here today. Information has been obtained from several other pretrial services programs across the state, which you'll see in the PowerPoint presentation. We've also met with stakeholders within the county to include observation of the bail process with the MDJs. The presentation that you're going to see today has been shared and approved by the Cumberland County Steering Committee. And just one other thing before we get started. I think this is an important part of the presentation. Much has been reported recently about bail reform and no cash bail. This is neither. This is about getting good information in the hands of the decision makers. So whenever the decision for bail comes, they can make the most appropriate decision. So let's get started with the PowerPoint presentation. Do I have control of that?
Yes.
And
Oh, you ready? There you go.
very good. How many pages?
It should be done. Here is the Bob. What computer is the Bob in? Here, this one. Just hit it. Did you do that or?
I just pushed the button. I don't know if you think I did at the same time. Let me try it again.
Try it again. No, it was me.
That's okay.
Give him the computer. Okay. Why, thank you, sir. The download. Okay, yeah, so you're at the very, very beginning.
Okay, we'll start a little bit about what are pretrial services. Pretrial services administer the bail process effectively and fairly to ensure the defendant's pending trial return to court and to safeguard the public while respecting the defendant's liberty. So it's very important to understand that the bail population is not convicted of a crime at this point. Bail determination is one of the most important decisions in a criminal case. Pretrial services assist the judicial authority by screening defendants' eligibility for release consideration. We want to make sure and find out who's appropriate. Pretrial services have the critically important role of supervising released defendants while pending trial. So we're ensuring that defendants comply with bail conditions imposed by the court. Equally important, we want to give defendants the opportunity to improve their status. Many people we see on bail supervision have unresolved issues, and they seem to crop up during the time that they're on bail supervision. And many, as we'll talk about a little bit later, end up back in jail. Judicial authority and community, particularly victims of crime, must have the confidence that bail determination is decided by using reliable and objective information. The bail conditions imposed by the court guard against non-appearance and rearrest while putting in place service to help rehabilitate the defendant. 37 counties in the Commonwealth provide pretrial services. Now that's a 2016 survey from the Pennsylvania State Pretrial Services Association. That survey has not been updated. However, there are more than 37 counties at this point that provide pretrial services. 10 of the 12 third-class counties provide pretrial services. The exception are Cumberland and Erie counties. Erie County previously did have a pretrial services program. It was discontinued with a new county leadership. However, now they see the benefit of it, and they're going to reestablish that program in 2023. Let's talk a little bit about how pretrial services are established. An individual is alleged to have committed a criminal offense. The police officer files a criminal complaint against the defendant. Then the defendant may receive a summons to appear before magisterial district judge and MDJ for preliminary hearing. That is usually on less serious allegations. In situations where there are more serious allegations or circumstances requiring the defendant may be arrested by the police officer and brought before the MDJ for a preliminary arraignment. This is really the group that we're targeting with pretrial services. People that are charged, arrested, held at the jail pending bail determination. At the preliminary arraignment, a bail determination is made, and that the preliminary arraignment typically occurs within a few hours of that arrest. The MDJ is tasked with determining whether to release the defendant and under what conditions. We're focusing today primarily on the MDJs because they do a lion's share of the bail determination. The common police court, the judges here in the courthouse, they also do bail determination, but not to the level that the MDJs do. So they base their decision on the following release criteria: the nature of the offense, any mitigating or aggravating factors, and that information is typically, at least the nature of offenses, provided by the arresting officer. Employment and financial status of the defendant's family relationships, length and nature of living arrangements. And those three are usually determined or decided through conversation with the defendant at the preliminary arraignment. Also look into age, character, reputation, previous bail experience, history of flight to avoid prosecution or escape, and if that's known by the police officer. Obviously, the prior record they look into, use of false ID, and any other factor related to willful non-appearance. And in domestic relation cases, obviously they consider the victim as well. The MDJ may release the defendant from custody or remand the defendant to jail, requiring a certain amount of financial security prior to release, or remand the defendant to jail without a bail option pending further hearing. I sat in with the actually MDJ Burbeck probably 4 weeks or so over the summer and the fall. And they make these important decisions with very limited information. And most of the information is obtained during a brief conversation with the defendant at the time of the preliminary arraignment. In every case in which a defendant is released on bail, the conditions of bail shall be, and these are per the rules of criminal procedure, and these are all standard bail conditions, appear in all future hearings, obey all bail orders. If there is any change of address, that has to be known. Certainly do not intimidate witnesses and refrain from criminal activities. In addition to those conditions, the MDJ may also add additional non-monetary conditions, and these are at the discretion of the MDJ. It could be reporting requirements. They have to check in. It could be travel restrictions, can't leave the county, perhaps can't leave the state. And then there are several other additional bail conditions that could be imposed by the MDJ. For example, no contact. You see this in domestic violence cases or assault cases. Refrain from participating in certain activities. Cannot consume alcohol could be an example. Drug and alcohol testing, drug and alcohol counseling, mental health evaluation or counseling, obtain employment. Electronic monitoring is on there, but I will know, and we'll talk a little bit about Allegheny County as we go, but usually electronic monitoring is used very sparingly. Allegheny County, they assessed around 20,000 people a year for pretrial services, and as of last week, they had 103 people on electronic monitoring. So we'll talk about how bail decisions are made here in Cumberland County. So this information is specific to us. The defendant is usually booked and held at the Cumberland County Prison pending a preliminary arraignment. The arraignment is usually conducted via video conferencing with the MDJ and defendant participating in that hearing. The MDJ is provided with the criminal complaint and input from the arresting officer. The arresting officer may also provide the MDJ with a bail recommendation. And as I've noticed in my 4 weeks with Judge Burbeck, the majority of those requests were for high bail. The MDJ makes a bail decision based mostly on unverified information provided by the defendant at this point. MDJ, through conversation with the defendant, as we talked about, determines the appropriate bail decision and uses those 10 release criteria that we discussed previously. There they are. Based on the information available, the MDJ sets bail, schedules a date for the defendant to appear before a preliminary hearing. At that time, counsel will be appointed. This is interesting, this information that we have, and I'll set it up so you're have a little bit more knowledge of where it comes from. We started using the ORAS risk needs assessment for adult probation in 2015, 2016. And at that time, we also started to using the assessment tool on inmates at the jail, those who were brought into the jail for bail consideration. The pretrial tool was conducted on those folks. And the interesting part of this was that information was not provided to the MDJs because we did not have a formal program established at that point. So what we have here is some data that actually shows what assessment says, and then we do a comparison to what the MDJ's actual determination of bail was for the defendants. And we looked at the data that we have from 2018 to 2020. And as you see in 2018, there were approximately 604 defendants assessed, and that was just through the MDJ. 2019, about the same number. And 2020 dropped for obvious reasons. At that time, we were looking about mitigating the situation at the jail because of COVID. But if you take notice to to the low risk. So those folks who were held at the jail, 241 in 2018, or 40%, scored low risk on the pretrial assessment tool. So that's concerning that a large portion of the people held at the jail on bail are low risk, and over 40%. And the reason I say that is because research shows that low risk people are typically self-correcting without justice intervention. In fact, incarcerating these low risk people with high and moderate risk people actually makes the low risk worse, increases recidivism for low risk. And I also want to make a point with the tool. The tool also identifies risk factor for reoffending and also for reappearing for court hearings. We found that of those people who assessed low risk had a very low rate of appearing in future court hearings in Cumberland County. Only 14% did not appear. And that's one of the reasons why they're held on bail, is to secure their appearance. But those low risk alone were 14% did not appear. And just in comparison's sake, the moderate risk folks, 31% of them did not appear for court hearing. So it actually gives some validation to the tool to see that people who are scoring low risk are doing the things that they're supposed to do rather than the other groups. So let's talk a little bit about how pretrial services, how it's going to look and how it will impact the bail decisions if it is established. Pretrial services universally screens pretrial defendants being held at CCP. There would be a personal interview conducted to go over the 10 bail release criteria. That would be completed by a pretrial officer. That information would be verified. That would also be done by the pretrial officer. That's a very important point because right now there is very little verification of the information that's provided by the defendant. The ORAS pretrial assessment would be administered to determine risk level. Assessment would help to guide those bail decisions. And the result of the pretrial investigation are provided to the MDJ along with recommended non-monetary bail conditions prior to the bail determination. If the defendant is released from jail, pretrial services and supervises the defendant to ensure bail conditions are followed. The defendant is enrolled in automatic notification of future court appearances. And pretrial services responds to non-compliance promptly and appropriately to the defendant's behavior. We actually believe that pretrial services will provide an incentive to people awaiting trial. The incentive to tackle issues that are at the root of their criminal behavior. If I'm being considered for a plea bargain by the district attorney or standing before the court for sentence, I'm sure that my work to resolve these issues, if they're drug and alcohol issues or mental health concerns that occurred while pending trial, will certainly be considered by the court or the district attorney prior to sentence. So let's talk about who will be served with pretrial services. Approximately 800 defendants each year would be screened through pretrial services, and those are the folks that the MDJ commit to the prison pending bail, and also the group of about 100 or 200 that are handled through the common pleas court. There are approximately 300 to 500 defendants awaiting trial each year that could possibly be supervised and have conditions, would be supervised by pretrial services. And these folks would be primarily moderate risk defendants. Although I would say that a smaller portion could be low risk because they could require some type of intervention. An example of that is a domestic violence case. We see them typically scoring low risk on our assessment tools. However, there could be bail conditions that there's no contact. That would be certainly something that pretrial services would be involved with. let's look at measuring success or scorecard and really how effective programming will be. There's a couple measurements that we've keyed in on. The first is appearance rate, the percentage of pretrial defendants who make scheduled appearance. We know that 75% of our Cumberland County cases appear at all future hearings at the present time. Our goal, of course, would be to improve those appearance rates through pretrial services. We know that counties with pretrial services increase their appearance rates. Allegheny improved to 80%. Dauphin County actually has a 93% appearance rate. Another measurement we would be looking at is the safety rate. Safety rate is the percentage of pretrial defendants who are not rearrested during pretrial status. We know through our data that 67% of our Cumberland County pretrial population avoid rearrest in the first year of release. Our goal, of course, would be to improve that number. We also know through research that bail supervision will reduce recidivism. Our recidivism study that we just conducted in 2020 shows that people released from jail post-sentence with supervision by adult probation were rearrested 33% less than the bail population awaiting trial without supervision. So that really shows to me the positive effect of supervision and how we can reduce recidivism with just supervising defendants well on bail.
Darby, do you take any questions now, or do you want us to wait till the end?
If you can wait, I have two more and then we'll be done.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And then I have the third measure is pretrial detainee length of stay. The average length of stay at the Cumberland County Prison for pretrial detainees who are eligible for pre-release or pretrial release. The goal here would be to release that stay. We have no baseline data for pretrial population in jail, to determine how long they stay. That could be easily obtained though as we move forward. And the final measurement would be the concurrence rate, the ratio of detention status that corresponds with the assessed risk score, particularly the low risk population. We know that 41% of our pretrial cases remanded to Cumberland County Prison in 2019 were assessed low risk. So our goal here would be to have less low risk defendants awaiting trial at the county prison. Okay, Gary, you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm glad you included some. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm glad you included this segment on measuring success. That's you've been before us before. I'm always trying to determine what's the value of our investment when a request comes forward. So obviously the goal here is to improve those rates. You mentioned that. So I guess the problem here is that, as I see it, is we have no real basis to, you don't have any targets on how much improvement, what percentage of improvement, or what new percentage targets you'd be looking at. So it's kind of hard to, measure the value, as it were, on this. So do you have from the other counties comparative data, for instance, on the percentages maybe they started with and where they ended up as a result of this? And, is that a good baseline for maybe making your own projections?
Yeah, some of the information I do have, Allegheny County really has most of the data, and that's because the University of Pittsburgh is there, and they've done studies with them. Many of the other counties do not keep, believe it or not, do not keep data. Dauphin County did provide us with a 93% appearance rate. I can certainly look into that and see where they started and where they came from, but those two counties would probably be perhaps maybe the only counties that would have that information.
You consider those comparable counties?
Well, I mean, they're certainly larger size county. Dauphin County is a third-class county.
Okay. All right. So it would be useful to just see, where they started, where they ended up, and if you can reach as you build this out. The concept's good, but it's the monitoring and reporting of what you do is also important for us because we have to make the fiscal decisions every year. So knowing where you're starting, where you want to end up, at least gives us a little better information. So that's kind of what I would be looking for.
Did you
The only
wanna
other
add something?
Can I, as a member of the public, so I've been doing this for over 20 years.
And I'm sorry, you just have to tell us who you are.
I'm
and where
sorry,
you're
my
from.
name is Dr. Vernon Hindman, and I've been working with the Cumberland County prison as well as the DA's office. There's moments in our lives when we're willing to listen. And when you find yourself in the back of a cop car or the prison, you're more open to listening than ever before. And of the times I have been successful in getting an alcoholic or an addict to go to long-term rehab, it has been in the pretrial phase. Always. And what happens if we're successful in doing it, probably the most effective in this area is the Salvation Army ERC. It's a 6-month to a year program. And if I can convince them to do that, I have yet to have one instance in which they dragged them out of there and sent them to prison. So the first thing happens, if they make this right decision in that period of time, the cost to the county goes way down, because instead of putting them up in the prison, they're actually getting help in a way that's going to help not only them and their family, but also the police officers, because ultimately, if recidivism, the first line of defense of recidivism is our police officers, and they get in addiction. It's a very dangerous situation for them. So there's a huge ripple effect of one good decision, and the timing for the decision is in that time. The idea is there's a ripple effect of money. So we were in my work, I'm doing this external to the system, and as I was talking to Darby recently to understand what he's talking about here, this is integrating it into the system with evidence-based practice. So there's an automatic adjustment with evidence-based practice. If you have an idea of how things are going to work, evidence-based practice closes the loop, and you can determine, you can actually prove scientifically whether your decisions are actually having a positive effect or not. So for me, I'm astounded by this stuff that you guys are considering. It's incredibly important. It changes everything in that period of time before, when there's an uncertainty principle. When they've been arrested and there's this sense of uncertainty of what's going to happen, that's where all the best decisions get made. Once they've been sentenced, they start to close down. You know, you see them in jail a week after they've been sentenced, and they're talking to a stone. Thanks for letting me say something. I'm very passionate because I spent a lot of time in that realm. And of the people who did get help, of the people that I drove to rehab in that time, those people tended to do well. I talk to them still. They call me 20 years later, and I see their grandkids. And the other folks I still sometimes see in jail.
Thank you.
Darby, Erie County, looks like they're going to reestablish a program that they had. It was, I guess, stopped at some point for whatever reason. Why are they reestablishing it again?
Well, they recognize the benefit of pretrial services. I think it was stopped 3, 4, 5 years ago because of changing county leadership. And I think that since they don't have it, I think they recognize the importance of it. I didn't get into the specific details with it other than that.
Now, Allegheny, you mentioned Allegheny County. Looks like they reduced their jail population roughly 40%. Is that typical?
I will say that was over COVID, just like our jail population has been reduced. I think at one time prior to COVID, we were about 400, somewhere in that neighborhood. And as of last week, we were at 92. So I'm sure that had to add to it. But the point is that they did have pretrial services to provide adequate supervision in the community while people were out of the jail.
May I, to add to that, please, Commissioner, first, Krista Lee Peck, for those of you who can't hear me online. First of all, Erie County also stopped the CASA program at some point. So the politics can be a little different sometimes up there amongst them. But with respect to the bail, I wanted Darby to just talk briefly about the ORAS. Essentially, that Ohio risk assessment, and I think you may have been around when we talked about initially, Commissioner, Commissioner Eichelberger, I can't remember if you were or not, Commissioner DeFilippo, but you were not. And it essentially takes the discretionary work out of the judges, and that it is a proven tool that will give us information, what he's saying, the low risk, the high risk, so it gives us more information. But regarding your question, Commissioner, about reducing people in jail, obviously that's the whole point. I mean, up until this point, we just don't have any pretrial services. People are out, not having any oversight on them whatsoever. And it's not to the sense that it's like probation, as some sort of punishment. It's just as he just pointed out, which is an excellent point. The best time to get them is whenever they're looking to make changes in their life. And so I was shocked when I was an attorney that there was literally until somebody was sentenced, it was like nobody was providing any services. It's like, how can we help this person when the services aren't in place? So that's essentially what we're trying to do now. Dauphin County, when we spoke to their head over there, told us that she used to in the beginning provide the exact, and this goes to Commissioner Eichelberger's request about how do you know that you're getting your money's worth. Well, they used to provide the statistics over there. Well, this is how much money it is. That's why we had the warden on here as well, of how much money it is for a day in jail versus how much money it might be for this. Well, I can just tell you even one is, an example is that I had a woman who was like 8 or 9 months pregnant the other day and on a bench warrant, but she was obviously addicted to heroin. It just keeps going on. I don't want to keep that woman in prison, but I need to place her on drug and alcohol testing. If we did it like beforehand, where we don't have pretrial services, there's nobody really following her or what's going on. I feel much more comfortable releasing her whenever there's pretrial services in place. So as I was saying, Dauphin County used to provide those statistics, and she said that they don't even provide them to the commissioners over there anymore because it's just obvious. Sorry, that like if you have somebody that's released from prison, it's going to save money as opposed to somebody that's in prison. And if you have a probation department that's actually overseeing it, their job, and as Dauphin County told us, they're not looking at it. They don't try to revoke people. They try to do the opposite. They're trying to just get them to work with them until the point that they really can't take it anymore. Then they bring it to the judge's attention, and then that should be corrected rather than somebody driving drunk in the community or under the influence. Thank you.
Dr. Vernon, you were talking about that ripple effect. And so even before you said that, I was writing down, Darby, all of the places within the county where I think this could show a financial savings. The sheriff's office, the prison, the court, police officers in municipalities, public defender's office, domestic relations, probation. Who knows what I forgot? Welfare, children and youth.
People, not only addictions, people are imprisoned for non-compliance with their child support. Putting them in prison doesn't make that happen. It puts pressure, and as well, there's a ripple effect of the kids. I mean, the kids. Here's one of the things. It's not a zero-sum game. So what happens if somebody's facing prison time? They got two choices. They can make these changes to potentially alter their sentence, or they can just go get blasted because they're going to jail anyhow. And literally, the most scary person in the world is the person with nothing to lose. And if they're facing long prison time, they got nothing to lose. They're going to get blasted. They're going to drive. They don't care anymore. The oversight thing is incredible too. A sense of setting people up for success. Literally, nobody gets out of high school and says, I'm going to drive my life into the ditch. It just happens. And they need somebody to help set them up for success. And if it's done from an official standpoint, if it's done so that it's baked into the system, I believe for a long time that Cumberland County is a redemptive county. Everybody from the DA's office to the prison, but everybody is oriented to do good for people and set them up for success if it's at the remotely possible.
I like it. Live in a nice county.
It is awesome.
My last point is to Darby's request about staffing this. The commissioner should know that right now, occasionally I will do a version of pretrial services, in that on a couple select cases where I really, such as the example I gave, I will basically force the probation department to do it in advance. The problem is there's not really any organization to it, and I'm not doing it as often because I know that they don't have the staff or they don't have the organization to put it into effect. So what we're doing right now is making it a wider opportunity. That's what we're seeking to do. Think that's fair, Barbie?
Yes, yeah, we have probably at any given time 5 to 10 defendants now in pretrial services with our office, and really we pull a probation officer's other duties to do it, but certainly not as comprehensive as we're talking here.
One other thing, I'm sorry, there's this dissemination of information problem. I would be working with, so I knew the real deal with them, but there was no official way for me to inject that into the system. Sometimes I would tell the DA, this guy's not getting it, don't let him out if you can help him. Other times I'm saying, this guy actually gets it, could be some rehab. What Darby's talking about is a baked-in system of communication so that everybody at a really granular level is aware at all times what the status is. Is this person going left or right? That part is critically important. It doesn't exist without this.
Sorry, there is one thing I know that you have shared with me that I'm not sure that you really have shared with the group that I think is important. And that is a clarification about the hierarchy as you have presented it with pretrial services and then the current. And that surrounds the deputy chief and your philosophy of how you would like her to be spending more of her time.
Yeah, let me touch on that a little bit. Currently, structure is we have 2 supervisors and a deputy chief in the department, myself. Actually, the deputy chief works as a supervisor just because we don't have the ability to have her do deputy chief duties alone. So what this would do is it would expand and give us another supervisor, and we would limit some of her supervisory duties so she could work on the quality assurance piece, because we started evidence-based practices probably 8-10 years ago. And in order to maintain fidelity with those practices, we got to make sure that the staff's doing what they're supposed to be doing in the assessments and all the other things we put forward. So that is a big part of this, is that the deputy chief would go into that role, ensuring fidelity amongst the tools that we're using. And this would give us the opportunity, this additional supervisor, to do that. It's actually something similar to that juvenile probation did in 2019 when they became an evidence-based organization. They did the same tactic, and it seems to have worked well for them.
Okay, anything additional there? I just want to point out that as I've said before, that the discussion of performance measures is not meant to be onerous. I heard Dr. Heineman and Judge Peck and others refer to evidence-based practices. Well, evidence-based practices presumes that you actually have evidence. So I don't think that it's difficult to come up with effective measures that provide us the evidence that it's achieving the types of results that you hope for, because the idea of performance measures is not just to cut somebody's budget. It's to determine whether they need more money or how they compare baseline versus other counties, and look for areas for improvement of the delivery of the service so you can stretch your dollars further. So it's not really meant to be onerous. Darby, to your case example of Erie County, I believe Vince pointed out that they had dropped the program. This is one of the misunderstood aspects of performance measurement is, there's a good chance that a program like that wouldn't have been dropped if the change in leadership had been able to be presented with data that demonstrated the true value of it. So that's why there's so much emphasis on having good, effective measures as opposed to anecdotal stories of successes, and those are important too. But goes to the sustainability question. The only thing I would ask is that I'd like to see information on, since we are looking at additional positions, as how this structure compares. How we arrived at this structure, how it compares to those other counties, so that we have a sense of, what's the proper balance of people and money being applied to achieve those results. So hopefully that's helpful. That's all I have.
Obviously, there's going to be a financial commitment out of this.
Sure.
And we can certainly talk about that more as we approach salary board, but I'll get the information together that's been requested here so we can make a good decision. And I do want to say, you did make a good point, Commissioner Eichelberger, about the measures and so forth. And I think, unfortunately, across the state, Other counties aren't very good at collecting data and doing measures, and I think we've excelled at that. And we have some good information here, and I think you're certainly on the right track. Yes.
Good. I appreciate that.
Darby, not to put you on the spot, but I know you have the answer because we've discussed it. How many positions are you looking to add?
So it would be there would be a supervisor, and there would be 2 positions. Actually, it'd be a net gain of 1 bargaining unit member, and a ballpark figure is annually about $110,000 to $120,000, and that's just salary alone.
Could you please repeat that number?
Yep, $110,000 to $120,000 per salary alone.
How many people?
It would be a supervisor,
Okay.
and then there would be 2 pretrial officers.
All right, because the chart that's in here looks like you're adding a whole new division.
Yes, so we are adding some more duties to that new supervisor. Those duties are coming from the deputy chief. She actually supervises 8 people now. Her duties would be reduced to supervising 4. Those 4 people would be moved over to the new supervisor in addition to pretrial services, and that would free up her ability to do the quality assurance piece.
That explains it.
Yes. So correct me if I'm wrong, but currently you have 26 probation officers.
Correct.
And the new model would have 27 probation
Correct.
officers.
Yes.
And then commissioners, just to note that if this does move forward to salary board, Darby, it understands how to request 5-year projections, so on and so forth.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything additional?
So,
Go ahead, Stacy.
no, I was just going to note that one thing that I did not ask Darby to do, which is to make a formal request, if he was ready to make that request today, to request a motion.
What is it that we would be motioning on?
Yeah.
Approving the concept of a pretrial services unit.
Sorry, I don't know if that's necessary. This was a discussion of the concept.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Do any other commissioners have a comment?
Yeah.
I'm
I mean, I agree with that. It's a concept. I think you've gotten some decent feedback here from the commissioners that there's interest in seeing how it would roll out, and I'd just be in agreement with that. I don't see any need for any motion now. Let's get details.
Yeah, the next step would be salary board, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, that's my opinion. I don't think we need a motion.
I think, regardless if you do a motion, I think the idea was we were coming to see if there would be support for him moving forward to the salary board step. Or if the commissioners had any other input that they would like us to look at
I
when
mean,
we're doing a program.
Honestly, it strikes me as a little premature for salary board because, I've asked for information both on how success is measured specifically, as well as the structure, how we arrived at the structure, how it compares to other counties.
So that's something that seems like information that we usually receive at salary board, right? Like when all of that background work is done, Darby, we receive that kind of very intricate information at salary board. I think it would be fine to go ahead. I'm fine with the concept and moving this forward. I would be interested, and I know that because we haven't done it, there may not be any answers, but I would be interested in a conversation about that ripple effect on savings as you bring that to salary board. Because this is, I mean, in the big scheme of things, we're adding 1 probation officer. What is the possible gain from that expense?
We can certainly look into that, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm fine with the concept too, but this is not an approval of anything other than to proceed, to salary board, get the information that the commissioners have requested. And that's, to me, the next step.
Okay. Is that anything else, Darby? Is that?
No, thanks.
Okay, well,
Thank you very
thank you.
much.
And,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate Dr. Heidemann for being there, Judge Peck as well. Any others I've
Thank you,
missed?
sir.
Okay, if we're ready to move on into the final item, we do have the conditional funding for the library system. Carolyn, are you ready for us?
I am. Switch places here. Sorry. So good afternoon, by the way. If everybody's ready, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Fine, but you probably received a Q4 report for our conditional grants. So we did one of those for the second, third, and fourth. Yeah, just like the down button. Okay, thank you. We'll start with the up button to get to page 1. So this is just, I won't read through this, but this is a summary first of the goals, and then for each of the 5 areas, some of the accomplishments just during the Q4. So I wanted to kind of sum it all up to you from a different document. These projects really have turned out to be, I think of them as perpetual projects in moving libraries forward in our communities. The funding, if awarded, will determine our capacity to carry additional projects related to these things into the future. And the first 2 projects were primarily spearheaded by my office. Eric Klein was in charge of cybersecurity, remains in charge of the cybersecurity group because he is our network administrator, and Barbara Leach is overseeing the group that's looking at office productivity. And they continue to meet once, sometimes twice a month. We check in. We also have a Microsoft Teams, which was one of our goals, was to get that up and running. And we do have a team that we're compiling all of our information, notes, having our meetings there. But the office productivity project was brought upon us because of changes in the Microsoft infrastructure. If you recall, the county, because of licensing, couldn't continue to carry the libraries. We had never incurred that level of cost, that level of staffing, the infrastructure. We needed to hire consultants. And so we did all those things and were able to successfully move our Outlook from the county's tenant to our own tenant. We successfully migrated all of the libraries over, all the users over, and are operating our own Outlook. We purchased the licenses and the security, and actually have since upgraded those licenses for Microsoft 365 when we realized in the course of this project that what we purchased wasn't enough. So we got a more robust license with more robust features. We've done some training and experimentation. We will be continuing to train at the library level in 2023, but we feel we've successfully made this transition over to the new platform. We did originally work with a consultant. The figures between $6,000 and $8,000 that we paid this consultant, very crucial to the migration of those users over to our tenant. IMTO could verify the number of problems that we had in doing that, but that was really successful. They weren't as helpful in the full implementation of Microsoft 365, but we did find the Microsoft Fast Track to be extremely helpful. And that's a service offered to us for free. So like that price even better. So we've been working with the Fast Track people. Eric has regular meetings with them to work on the background, and our trainer and administrative assistant are working on sort of the front end along with other people to work out how we work in shared documents, how we work in teams, where do we save our things, the whole environment of OneDrive, all new to us. So they're navigating through that. So we've requested $25,000 for the completion of that project. The next one is with the move to Outlook and Office. We also noticed that there was a need for cybersecurity measures to be increased, and that is part of our 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. So this fit right in as a conditional grant. And to do this, we hired an outside consultants to perform a full liability study. And we addressed the deficiencies that were found in that liability study. We applied for cybersecurity insurance. It's not final yet, but we have things in place to get that insurance and address the data breaches and hacking attacks. There's some things along the way to do with that. We have done quarterly PCI vulnerability scans and just notified today, we passed our most recent quarter. We provided security awareness training to key staff members, and cybersecurity articles were sent through our monthly newsletter. We bumped it up to weekly during Cybersecurity Awareness Month and sent those out to staff for staff education, and then have created an intranet website for storage of information about cybersecurity for all staff, which will be moving over to Teams when we have that fully implemented. We're also going to be addressing cybersecurity with every new staff member through an onboarding series of trainings, informational pieces that will be sent out for onboarding new staff at member libraries. We traditionally don't influence a whole lot of the onboarding at member libraries. They're independent institutions. They manage their own staff, but because they're going to be on our network, we felt that was really important. And we did get the licensing for the FishMe so that we can continue to do cybersecurity checks. So we continue to look forward to additional policy revisions to promote safety on our network and the integrity of our network. And we're asking for an award of $25,000 for the completion of the cybersecurity project. The next 3 projects were spearheaded by library administrative staff, 2 directors, and an assistant director took leadership of these projects. The makeup of the teams that worked on these projects were from member libraries and the community as well. We had some board members and some people, for instance, in the schools one, we had a person associated with the schools, children's librarians, that sort of thing involved in those. So to talk about the partnerships first, we found that public libraries across the nation were working with social work and social services departments to use library spaces to increase the breadth and the depth of the services that are available to their residents, and finding great success in that. And so our new strategic plan, 22 to 2026, has projects that focus on enhancing the quality of life for our county residents. And we started looking into what sorts of things could we be doing to coordinate with other county departments. So library staff met with key staff from county departments to determine collaborative fits for various library locations. So the needs are different depending on the department. The needs are different depending on the geographic area. We started with one-on-one interviews. We assigned someone to interview basically another department head. And then we also did panel discussions with all of the library directors present, and they were invited to bring additional staff and those county departments represented to do those interviews with us. We had interviews with children and youth, with Office of Aging, with the reentry program. We did an interview with the mental health, intellectual, and developmental disabilities. Of course, that you probably already know this, but it was revealing to us how big that department is, and they really fit more than two needs, but we could put them in 2 buckets. So we looked at that as 2 different interviews that we did with them. We did an interview with Veterans Affairs, and we talked to the contact contact helpline from PA 211 through the United Way. I've also been in conversations with Jack from Drug and Alcohol. He was unable to do a panel discussion, but we, in fact, just yesterday we were talking about how in 2023 we have some things we want to do together. So, but those were our primary interview groups. The biggest reward that came out of that was relationship building and awareness on both sides. As I mentioned, like with MHIDD, really having a true understanding of what they do and how they provide services to the community. An example in the other direction was meeting with Danny from Veterans Affairs. He had no idea that we had, he had no idea we had 8 libraries across the county, and he was looking for spaces to meet. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to build a new relationship there, but that was a nice connection to make, and so we'll continue to reach out to that department and see how we can help them with their outreach to the community. But a few things that we learned were, well, education as to where our libraries are located and what they have to offer departments. Many of the departments understood what we offer, but they wanted a PDF. They specified a PDF, not a piece of paper, not a brochure, but a PDF of services that we have to offer, so they could refer their clients and pull that up easily on a computer. We connected with specifically with the Child and Adolescent Services System program, and we met with them and talked to them about the schools that they represent and how we might be able to appoint liaisons based on the schools that they serve and the libraries located in those school districts. We got a lot of really good feedback from them on and are making some service changes based on those conversations. One of those is booking meeting room solutions. They mentioned that they like using libraries for meetings, but they have to look 8 different places to figure out how to use a meeting room. And and there are 8 different methods. We're going to work this year to see if we can develop a single service platform, even if it's only for internal use for county departments, perhaps, but a way that they can go one-stop shopping to use one platform to book a meeting room. Providing spaces for community education, such as QPR training. Annie has already reached out to try to get some spaces to do some training in 2023 for that. Promoting what services we have to offer, planning intergenerational events and programs. I think that was another one that may have come out of, it may have been the CASP meeting. They were talking about, it's nice that we have children's programs, it's nice that we have adult programs, but they need places where families can come together and interact with other families in the community, and that not all library programs offer that. And so that gave us a place to, again, begin to think about how can we offer programs that would suit that need and perhaps promote them through that agency. And one of the things we've talked about is providing library liaisons to each of these agencies. So we did the one-on-one interview, we did the panel discussion, but keeping those conversations going by assigning someone to that group and attend a meeting once a year with them, once or twice a year, as I think we were talking about, that that they could bring information from all the libraries, not just their own library, and also be a one point of contact. Again, we kept hearing over and over again, people who were aware of libraries and their value were frustrated that they had to go 8 different places. One of the things we're doing for that, one of the groups mentioned library programming being difficult to find. Again, 8 different places you need to look. So we mocked up a flyer that will probably finish that up and send it out to them. It's got 8 QR codes and you can scan and get immediately to the events that are applicable. Some other things that happened were PA Career Link workshops were held at the John Graham and the Bosler Library, and naloxone training at Bosler Library. They did one with their staff, and they offered periodic workshops over the summer for the public. And so again, this is that getting back to working with Jack and some of the services that he has to offer to drug and alcohol. So for the there are certainly a lot of things that came out of this that are going to go into 2023, some projects that we're planning to do and relationships that we're planning to continue building those relationships and enhancing those relationships. And we're asking for an award of $20,000 for the completion of this project. Primarily the funds for this will be used to assist libraries in carrying out these projects. One of the things we heard the most was they don't have the capacity to pay their staff to go out and do these things. And so we're hoping that we can filter that, if this money's awarded, filter it down to member libraries to assist with that. The community data project, what the primary goals in that were for us to look at data associated with users, because we've noticed a cultural shift in the makeup of our users, but we didn't have the data to fully understand it. We were hoping that by examining 2020 census figures, we would be able to get a better grasp on that, but the data is just not quite ready for us. We've been working with the Penn State Data Center to get that data and to get it in a framework that we already have 2020 and 2010 data, so we can look at a 20-year, 30 years worth of data. 30 years worth of data for total view of the trends. So we're still waiting for some data to come out, and the decennial data that won't be ready until May 2023. But we have, places to plug that in when it arrives. But we've started to examine the figures that we do have and see how we can diversify our services. And again, this is all tied to our strategic plan through 2026. So we have plans on what to do with this. We determined match points. I talked about these, I think, in our last meeting. We determined 3 key match points for public library service improvements. And they are things that we want to, it's helped us with our planning for 2023. We want to focus on grade 3 reading skills. And one of the things that we've found through this and focusing on that is that we don't feel there's a way we can directly impact schools. We can't go into schools and tell them what they need to do. But what we can do is examine our internal practices. The youth services programmers that we hire, what kind of certifications do they have and where do we want them to be? So looking at how we can better train them for early literacy skills, perhaps through some sort of certification or just making sure that they have access to information. One of those pieces of information is understanding how reading levels are used by schools. Each school district determines their own way that they are going to, within their own curriculum, how they're going to measure reading levels. And so we want to make sure we understand how they're measured and how that correlates to our collections. And we'll be doing that through, kind of bleeds into the next section, school partnerships.
I have a hard stop in like 10 minutes, just to let you know.
Okay.
I want to be hard.
So senior populations was another area that we identified through that data. And we are appointing a group in 2023 to increase engagement with senior centers and care facilities around the county. We have a few people who have a few pieces of knowledge, but this will get them together to make those approaches as a united group. And the third group was people living in poverty. So again, appointing a group to look at barriers to library services for our impoverished populations, using our partnerships to provide reference resources to those populations, and continued service to the community as warming and cooling centers, and perhaps even defining more what that means. We found through a news interview that when they asked, well, what does it mean? What do you have available? We're like, communications asked if they could put our names down, and we have warm spaces, but we thought we could be better at that. And so we're asking for an award of $20,000 for the completion of this project, and the funds will be used to assist member libraries in carrying out those projects. And then the last step in this is the schools initiative. Again, Sue Erdman took leadership of this project, and we really were trying to focus on public schools, but also our private schools in Cumberland County to maximize use of our resources. And one of our first actions was working with the GIS department to build a map that was interactive so we could determine where it's like an overlay of school districts and library service areas, and figuring out who serves which schools, and in situations where, for instance, Big Spring School District, where it's Bosler, Shippensburg, and John Graham, what impact does each library have on those? Shippensburg, very little impact on Big Spring, because most of that school district that's assigned to Shippensburg Library is Forest. So those were the sorts of things we did, was looked at the data, looked at the geography, and tried to figure out who is best to approach schools and meet with schools. Some of the libraries have started with those partnerships, having multiple people from one library, or from multiple people from member libraries go to one school district and start engaging them in conversation about how we can serve them. We also, part of that was creating a list of key contact people within the school districts.
So Carolyn, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think what would really be better here is if you provide simply the Q4 overview of whether you have achieved the project and the request for funding. I know that these projects are so exciting, and I could sit here for hours to hear about them. I really could, but I'm just very mindful that we're gonna run out of time.
Well, the rest of the things are very, I think they're listed in that handout for Q4. Talks about the website and the show kits that we've created. And so for this project, we're asking for an award of $10,000 for the completion of this project. And so the 5 projects do add up to the $100,000 for the grants, but understanding the approach wanted to be with each one being assessed individually.
And I think I'll just add, just to note that I think each of these projects has lent itself to an ongoing effort by the Cumberland County Library System to continue on this sort of improvement project. And I think that's really very exciting. So do you have any questions for Carolyn?
I don't.
Questions?
Yeah, I have none.
Okay. I'll just mention, I think this is great. I think it's a stark contrast to maybe the previous presentation we had in a couple of important ways. I mean, the documentation is very helpful. This is all well conceived, well defined. The benefits are clear. Your initiatives are self-connected. They're tied to other initiatives. They're all mutually reinforcing, tied to your strategic goals, specific results, well reported. I think this looks marvelous.
Thank you. So
I don't have anything
to ask for a motion to be made then to fund the 2022 conditional grants.
So I will move to approve the funding for the 2022 conditional grants for the Cumberland County Library System.
Sorry.
I will amend that motion to add in the amount of $100,000.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. It is moved and seconded. If there's no further questions, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Very good. Thank you, Carolyn. Very informative. Okay, that will move us on to other business.
We have one other.
So the second agenda item is discussion about a 2023 memorandum of understanding for and potential conditional grant projects. Stacy and I have been talking about the current memorandum of understanding, which was written in 2016, a couple of amendments, but it's feels really lengthy and full of some project related goals that we wanted to pull out. I don't know, did they get a copy? They did not get a copy of it. Okay. So we've been working together, and I think Stacy's now been working with Keith to revise that memorandum just to simplify it, simplify the language, but keep the spirit of it with the reiterating the commitment to the millage rate, reiterating a commitment to annual $100,000 grants that would be pre-approved by the commissioners and also assessed by the commissioners before being granted at the end through these quarterly reports.
And we'll continue the quarterly reports next year. Keith has provided the document back to me, and I just haven't had a chance to have a chat with Carolyn to kind of take that to the next level. Our goal is to get that in a final form that Keith and I are happy with, that Carolyn is happy with, for her to take to the library board on January 9th. And then that will come forward at a meeting shortly thereafter for approval. And Carolyn has thoughtfully provided a list of possible projects. They're still working to narrow them down.
Right.
I think the level of the bar has been set high, and I think Carolyn has jumped over that bar with room to spare with the projects for next year. So
they have a copy of the project.
Yes.
Good.
I like them all, but I really like the first one, chat with the librarian cooperative.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that one. Grant or no grant, I want to make that happen. So,
These look great.
Yeah.
yeah, so we're working to build consensus with the directors, but there have been illnesses and hospitalizations and just some things that have set us behind a bit in finalizing these. We'd probably like to limit it to 4 or 5 projects again.
Right.
So we'll be back to talk about that.
as we kind of firm up what that might look like, we'll certainly share that in advance of the meeting that it will be on, as far in advance as we can.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carolyn. Very thoughtful, as always.
Okay, that completes the bullet points of discussion items. And that moves us to other business. Anything additional? I'm not hearing anything, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Very good. We stand adjourned then. Thank you all.
You.